So this evening I'm interviewing Richard Manzanero, one of my clients who is now close to multi-millionaire, is worth well over £1.5 million. He's got a certain amount of properties and he's going to be sharing with you his journey. I'm going to interview him. Don't miss it. It's exciting. He's been had a very interesting career interviewing lots of very famous people. He's going to share his stories about a few of them, including Margaret Thatcher and Kylie Mynogue. So don't miss it. I look forward to speaking to you very soon. So thank you very much for agreeing to let me interview this evening and chat about your wonderful and amazingly different history of what you've done. So, yeah, film industry. Who's your favourite person that you interviewed? And we'll talk a little bit about this before we go into your property stuff. You kind of interviewed, and I believe they worked we did a couple of interviews when you were filming, like you asking the questions and them answering the question within their answer.
Yes.
So who's your favourite to work with? Arnold Schwarzenager, Tom Cruise?
That's a really interesting question. And I was fortunate enough to meet quite a few different colourful people in various areas of industry and various areas of sort of political life. I met a few political leaders and things like that. There's two people I was really impressed with. You might not like me after this, but Kylie Mynogue, we interviewed Kylie Mynogue at Bibendums. I don't know if you know Bibendums on Fulham Road. It's this beautiful Michelin building, and it was bought by, I think, Conrad, and his group. And they went around at that point in time buying up really cool properties, restoring them, and then turning them into restaurants and bars and everything else. So we had a little bit of time, and up came Kylie Mynogue, and she's absolutely beautiful, with flawless skin and softly spoken. And she sat kind of cross-legged on the chair, like a child might do. So you couldn't help but love Kylie Mynogue. She was just so sweet. And back in the day, believe it or not, we actually did an interview with Margaret Thatcher.
Okay.
And Margaret Thatcher just left this huge impression. It was like she was an unstoppable machine. There was nothing that was going to stop this woman achieving whatever it was she kind of set down in the menu, whatever she decided with her and her peers to kind of do to make the country move forward. And just into the 80s, you may or may not remember this, but there were power strikes. Everybody had boxes of candles. It seems incredible, that this could possibly happen in the UK, but we had kind of boxes of candles because when the energy companies switched off the power because the workers wanted more money or whatever, they literally just said, oh no, you can't have any, and just pulled the plug. And so there we were in the dark. And the dustman decided to do the same thing. So then Margaret Thatcher got all these things together, and I interviewed her, not personally, but as a cameraman, and was just really impressed with her aura, this incredible sort of confidence that she just gave out on and off camera, and the ability to walk into a nuclear power station and instantly talk to people about their jobs and things like that, but also go down to Petticoat Lane Market, and talk to people on the stalls and still connect with those people. So those two people really impressed me, I've got to say. Kylie is just my absolute favourite all the time, to answer your question, around that way.
Okay, and Walking with Dinosaurs.
Yeah, so the BBC launched a series. Now, I'm not sure what happened, but I used to do a lot of stuff with the BBC, and I was a regular kind of camera johnny for them, and I used to go out shooting documentaries, and used to go kind of all corners, to film stuff, and there was this really cool producer called Richard Dale, and he was like the bad boy of the BBC departments, because everybody else would wear a suit, for example. They didn't, but for example, and Richard would just have like an open neck shirt, and his ideas were extremely off the wall and extremely creative. So when the BBC were budgeting and getting together the idea and the group of people to make that particular series, the Walking with Dinosaurs series, it was actually a series of films. They were sort of 1 hour, 2 hour specials, and they had this massive budget. The budgets were, I'm about to say, like about 4 or 5 million on each one. So it's like a feature film. So we actually had separate camera crews that went out and shot different things. So one camera crew, for example, would specialise in sunrises, sunsets, moving water, shadows and things like that, what they call bridging shots. So between the presenter delivering to camera and the live action, if there is any action, in between you need all these like cool shots. And we were shooting in Africa. I was out there for a couple of months around Johannesburg, and it was amazing. I was driving to work one morning and I was in a Jeep with a few people, and we were trying to find a suitable kind of location to bring the actors to. And as I turned the corner in this Jeep, there were 3 giraffes that were just sort of, having a bit of breakfast, I suppose. They were just kind of eating leaves from this branch, and I didn't know that they had black tongues, and they sort of wrapped their tongues around these thorny leaves and sort of just pull them off. And I had to picture myself, because I was sort of in the middle of Africa with these incredible beasts all around me, and we were just scouting around for locations. It seemed like a jolly. It was really long, hard days, I hasten to add. So it was really interesting. We had to do a shot with Lord Robert Winston, who is a member of the House of Lords, and we decided the only way to do it was to get him up in a hot air balloon. So what we wanted was a hot air balloon to go across the desert parts of Africa, Kalahari I think it's called, and to do his piece to camera. And of course you need a cameraman up in the balloon, so we had to set off at like 3:30 in the morning, because it's very cool, and it takes time for the balloon to fill up with hot air, and if it's going to be a hot day, you need to leave earlier rather than later. And so off we went, and so I thought, am I really doing this? I'm floating across, the Kalahari in a hot air balloon with this lord.
Yeah.
And I think I was actually doing that.
Yeah.
And obviously it used in the show.
And that's pretty cool, because I know I did the Nile when I went on one of Christopher Howard's Billionaire Adventure Club things. Yeah. So that is definitely an experience. Anyway, look, I see the bit about abseiling down the side of a building in London, but we really need to move on to how on earth did you go from cameraman, albeit a bit of a stunt cameraman and interviewer of all different sorts of people, to property? What got you from doing what was typically, although it was a very interesting job, from a job to property investment without any kind of entrepreneurial bits in the middle?
I'm going to tell you, you're not even going to believe me, and anyone listening is probably not going to believe me either. But I was filming in the Caribbean. We called it 9.5 weeks, although we were actually there for about 10 weeks. So I spent 10 weeks filming in Jamaica. And what that means really is that each day you're on and off a speedboat, you're in a helicopter, you're up and down the mountains, you're taking 4x4s to get these incredible shots and things like that. And it's really cool being a camera jockey, because I can talk to the helicopter pilot and ask him to start off low and then take me up to 1,000 feet or something like that. And I will also use the zoom on the lens to exaggerate that feeling. And it's a really good shot as an opening for a program. But that side, right, on Sundays, we had 2 camera crews there that were covering all these stories, and I was one of them. We did different shifts, okay? So I would start one day maybe at 12 and then finish at 8 or 9 or 10 or something in the evening. And the other camera crew would start a bit early, and we sort of swap it around so we both weren't exhausted. But on Sundays, we had a day off, okay? So on Sundays, I used to prepare my clothes, give them a wash, have a bit of a chill, go for a swim. I don't know if you've ever been swimming naked at all, but each morning, I used to get up, go down to the beach very early, I hasten to add, and just swim in the Caribbean completely naked, and it was the most amazing experience. On Sundays, I used to do my washing, and I went into this bar, And I was the only guy there. It was just me and the barman. And so I ordered a beer and I sat down. And it was very cool.
You did get dressed first, I take it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. These bars, like, you know, I was just on my own, and this guy came in, right, and I said, you know, inevitably you have to start talking. There's only 3 of us in there. There's me, this guy from America, and the barman. So the guy said to me, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm a cameraman." And he said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. What sort of stuff you do?" Talked about the job and what we were doing there on location. And then he said to me, "What do you do for residual income?" And I thought, what does he mean? I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean by residual income?" He said, "Oh, you know, like residual income. Have you like written a book or a song? You've got CDs, you've got stocks and shares, have you got land, property, gold, or anything like that? Have you invested in?" I said, "Well, no." He said, "Well, how do you actually make your money?" I said, "Well, actually what I do is I just stand next to my camera, and if I don't get a booking, you know, somebody doesn't say, 'Hey, here's a week's filming, Richard,' then I don't have any money at all." He went, "Oh, okay." He said, "Young man," he wasn't that much older than me, but I had the benefit of the experience of residual investment. He said, "Young man, I suggest you go and look at residual investment." And so we were chatting about this for a few minutes, and another guy came in, another American guy, and he said, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do?" And this guy that I was talking to, his name was Dave. The other guy's name I've forgotten now who he is, but what he did was he had, and there is a point I'm explaining this to you. What he did was we asked him what he did, and he said, "Well, I've got a series of suntan salons." I went, "Okay, so whereabouts?" And he said, "Well, you know, I've got a couple in Arizona, and I've got like a few in Texas, and I've got a few here and there." I said, "But isn't it really, really hot in those places?" He said, "Yeah, but you know, what people want is they want a kind of cool environment, they want some nice music, they want a choice of lotions and potions that they can put on. They want to be pampered, and they can go from the air-conditioned car to the air-conditioned suntan place. And it's so popular, we've opened up 3 this year or something, and we've got plans to open some more." So I couldn't believe, like, on this, you know, in those places where it's incredibly hot, that this guy was making us, you know, a successful business by starting up these salons, you know, that appeal to people. And so the 3 of us were sort of starting to chat a little bit about what's going on. And Dave, I said to Dave, "Well, what do you do exactly?" And he said, "Well, I used to be an air conditioning salesman, and I used to go along to places, new builds and construction companies, and ask them if, you know, our company could install it." And I think he was working in Florida, and he said that every 2 years, you have to have all your filters cleaned to avoid Legionnaire's disease. And so you usually sign up a maintenance contract, right? And so what Dave said was, he said, "I realised that all these filters needed changing. The American equivalents were like a couple of $100 for these filters." And he went along to a business expo, and he found a company to make filters. And this is the first time I'd ever heard of drop shipping, where you place an order on a site, the company will put your label on it, and then send it to the end user, the customer, right? And so what Dave realised is that he could undercut the market. He could undercut the market hugely by using, this was about 15 years ago now,
so kind of
by using Chinese companies.
Okay, like white labelling, like, which is a lot to do
Exactly.
with our favourite delivery company now, Amazon. Okay, so look, I need to move you into when you first started with property, and I'm going to ask everyone to start typing questions if they've got any questions for you. So how did that conversation turn you into doing property? You obviously returned back to the UK, and something happened for you.
Okay, back to the UK. Yeah, I got back to the UK and I thought, do you know what, that Dave was right. And he'd made a fortune selling these air conditioning filters by using drop shipping and white labelling. And he said he had control of the market for about 7 or 8 years. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. He undercut everybody in the American filter marketplace by 50% for 7 or 8 years. He completely controlled it and just made massive money from it. And he told me about that later on. But when I got home, I thought, I've got to do something about residual income. I'm going to have a look around and see what to do. I'm interested in property because I believe for ordinary folks, it's the only opportunity you'll ever get to leverage your money and effectively get a return. Sometimes absolutely beyond belief. And you've only just got to look at the numbers, going back to the post-war years to where we are today. You know, the old days we could buy a house for
with them
£1,300,
doubling.
And so I came back and I tried to think what I would need to replace my income. I was on good money, you know, I was working my butt off, so I was earning really good money. And I was trying to replace it, and I thought property is the safest and only way that I will ever be able to give up my job, which I love, but you know, it was very demanding and very hard and physical. You know, it's quite a sort of a tough little gig to keep on doing it year in, year out. So I got to about 50 years old and I thought, I really need to get this sorted. And so when I bought a property with some money that I saved up, I had no idea what I was doing. I got into it and it rented immediately. In fact, while I was doing the repairs, fixing it up, somebody walked past and said, "Oh, I'm looking for a place to live, can I have a look around?" And the lady said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." The lady said, "I'll come and have a look." And she had a look around, she said, "I'll take it." And so while the construction guys were in there, putting the bathroom in, sorting out the kitchen and everything else, this lady decided to take this flat from me. And I gave her the carpet samples and I said, "Which carpet would you like?" Because there wasn't any carpet there. She said, "Oh, I like that one." I said, "I'll fit that carpet for you." And so she stayed with me right until last year. So she was my tenant for about 11 years. And she just happened to be walking past while we were fixing the place up and took the property on. And what happened was I sort of ran out of deposits because you needed, you know, 25%. It was actually 15% at that point. But it soon moved into 25% past 2009. And so I was sort of running out of cash to put into more properties. And I thought, I just need to get some experience. I need to get some help. You know, I need some people that know kind of what they're doing. Because I'm just fumbling along here. I've had a modest amount of success, but more by fluke than anything else. I started attending the London Property Network, which was a beautiful building behind Selfridges, their hotel there. And it's where I met you. And you gave me an idea to go and do something. And you supported me spiritually, physically, emotionally. But you supported me. And you said, "Yeah, you know, what's that can happen? Just go for it. You can do this. You can do this." And I needed a lot of money in 28 days. So I've been doing some research in an area. I followed your advice about finding the area that we want, see that it's within budget, see if the rents work out, the various criteria that you kind of laid out. And I found these two properties that I thought looked like really good value. In fact, they were 50 grand under market, I figured, at the numbers that they were sort of talking about. And so I went along to this auction, and it was just one house I was interested in. And the guy said to me, "Did you know that the other house is actually the attached, semi-detached house to the one that you're interested in? So there's the one that you're interested in. The one next door, that's up for sale. It's by the same owner. So really, if you do anything, you want to buy both of them." So I went to the auctions to spend 200 grand, and I actually spent 400 grand. So when the hammer came down, they were both mine, and then I had 28 days to find £400,000. I left a deposit, which left me pretty skim, and thankfully, because of the advice that you gave me, you might not remember this, but the bridging company that you had at that time forwarded £400,000 to me, thank you very much, Glenn, which I then gave back to you several hours later with a little fee attached for your troubles. And I became the owner of those two houses. Now, those two houses valued up at 500 grand, okay? So that one deal I made, thanks to your knowledge and information and your money, I made £100,000 in one day. I've never repeated that since, and that so far is my best day ever in property. I'm sure you've had the same and better 10 times over, 100 times over. But that for me was totally amazing. I sat down and I thought, I've just earned 100,000 in equity on these two deals. I thought, I really like this property malarkey. This is just so cool. You know, 100 grand up on the day. A couple of tenants were in place already. I had to do a little bit of painting and decorating, get a few more tenants in because one of them was an HMO. And those properties have now doubled in price, maybe more than that too. And because they're in quite a cool kind of corner plot, There's potential to develop it and put flats in it or something like that, you know. But had I not have met you at those meetings, and can't remember the partner you were working with at the time, his name, but had I gone on my own, I wouldn't have got those little gems, the little nuggets that you take for granted because you just know it so well.
Yeah, it's just the creative financing. It's the creative financing and the same day refinancing, and we just adapt as we move along and times change. So that's kind of really cool. But you phoned me, asked me a few questions on a text, and then phoned me a few days ago, and you've been happy to share in an email that your portfolio total equity is now 3 million.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Sorry, not equity, the value of the portfolio.
You're talking to a multi-millionaire, Glenn, on paper. Imagine that.
Okay, so yeah, you've got a portfolio worth 3 billion and 1.6 million in equity, yeah?
Yeah. If I sold everything, it would be 1.6 million to play with. Cool. Any thoughts or ideas, let me know.
All right, but
what we can do with it.
But the portfolio is actually generating you over £100,000 a year in profit, yeah?
Yes, it is. You know, because when I started to work figures, and you know, one of the training programs that I attended, that you were given, was about sorting out your finances and sort of saying, well, how much you actually need to replace your job. You know, like. We're very fortunate if you can find people that love their jobs and don't mind doing it and one thing and another. But for the most part, people just sort of do the job to make the money to pay the bills to start all over again the following month. And so I was desperately keen to replace my quite good wages that I got as a cameraman as, you know, as a property guy. I don't know what the term is. But I just wanted to replace my wages. I needed about $2,000 a week. And I just hope that doesn't sound too sort of big-headed or whatever. It's just...
It is what it is, Richard. It is what it is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. It's like at that time, that's what I needed. I needed £2,000 a week, about 4 to 5 thousand on a regular basis coming through the system. And I just kept on using your techniques until I could sort of replace the income. And then a funny thing happens when you get to that point. Because now you can say, well, should I carry on with my normal job, or should I just dive into the property a bit more? So, because I was hanging out with you and your lot, I thought I'd just do a bit more property. That Ben Armstrong seems to know what he's doing, he's got it together, you know, I'll just sort of carry on down this vein. And I just stuck with that, Glenn, until, you know, till my next kind of brainwave came along, a thing to try and do. What it gave me was that great flexibility, because no matter what I did, when I went to sleep, my properties were going up a little bit in value, a tiny bit, and my rents kept coming in. And I've been blessed with really good tenants, and I have had some issues. I have had to, you know, go to courts and get solicitors, and I have had some issues along the way. It hasn't been completely all the cherries, but like I just saw, when I go out each day, I know that leverage that those properties are earning me, you know, that are working for me. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I could be sweeping the streets, and I know that, you know, in several years' time, those properties will be worth more, but the rents will go up accordingly. That's a sort of ever-increasing arrangement.
Yeah.
And so I've got you to thank for that. I never would have spotted it, you know, otherwise.
Yeah, it's more than a pleasure. And you've kind of officially announced yourself as another one of my million clients. So you've had a number attached to you, number 86.
86? Wow.
Yeah, the 86 of my clients who I've discovered are millionaires. Because if you remember, when I run the courses, I always mention about a bottle of champagne when people get to $1 million.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for mine. What happened to that?
Yeah, no, that's you buying me one, Richard.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Pleasure.
Because that's how I measure my number of clients who become millionaires. So, okay, so No, I'm
want
gonna,
some black label on the list straight there.
yeah, I always say to people, so you need to listen to this very careful. I don't mind what type of champagne it is, because for me it just measures how many clients I've got to millionaire. But it doesn't mean to say if you buy me a cheap bottle that I won't judge you.
Okay. Oh God. Taskmasters always. I remember sort of going on to all your meetings, and I was really stressed out, right? Because I was exchanging contracts, and the contractors were trying to get in, and I was using the creative techniques, and I had all the plates sort of spinning. And the thing that you haven't mentioned, or maybe you have, and I just wasn't there that day, is that while you're moving forward with your property investments and your ideas and things like that, you've got to keep looking behind you as well, because things go on in your properties and you just have to keep tabs on absolutely everything. So while you're moving forward, you're also looking backwards, spin a few plates and then track forward again. The other thing was, right, is I thought, well, you just buy a property, you do this, and then you sort of rent it, but no. Everybody that's listening, if there is anybody, they've got a strategy, okay, they've got a strategy, and they're going to stick to that strategy, and that is the one that they're going to use. Well, what I learned from you is that you've got 10 strategies, or 20 strategies, or 30 strategies. I've sort of lost track, really, of the number of strategies you had.
24.
Is it 24?
Okay. Yeah.
I knew you had a few sort of things going on, and as I learned about each one, it was a bit of an aha moment, thinking I never thought of that, because I'm so focused on this side of property investing, I didn't look on that side of property investing, you know. And so I started to just become a bit more mature, I suppose, a bit more grown up about the whole thing, and have a slightly broader perspective, you know.
Yeah, I just remember a long time ago you being very nervous about the first couple of properties and is it going to work, what's going to happen, and all that sort of stuff. And I think you said something like, well, look, they're worth 500 grand and you're buying them for 400. What the hell are you worrying about?
Yeah, exactly that. Well, because I'm so sceptical, I'm so nervous, and like, you know, I really do know what a quid's worth. I've worked really hard for everything, and I've not had anything given to me, like most people, you know, no different in that respect. And so I'm very sort of sceptical, but I just saw you coming back with results after results after results. And I came along to a few of your properties. I don't know if you remember them, but Glenn's got some beauties out there, some absolute real corkers. I went on to a bungalow, and you bought it for chips, you bought it really cheap, and usually a rascal. I don't know how you got the deal together. Everyone else was selling their bungalows for 250, you got it for like 180 or something like that. So straight away you quit it, even if you just turned it around and put it back out again. But what you decided to do, which I love, is you decided, it was so big, this bungalow, you know the one I'm talking about. It was so big you decided to turn it into, I think it was 3 bungalows or something like that. Was it sort of L-shaped or something?
No, I remember that it's a 7-bed bungalow that we turned into 4 2-bed apartments.
Yeah, so most folks would just think, well, let's just fix the bungalow up and get it rented out, and it should bring in $750 a month all day long on a good day, because it's got a nice garden, it's good size, or whatever the figures are, I don't really know. But you arranged it so that 4 of them were bringing in $750 a month, and everyone was completely gobsmacked, and you bought it for 180k, or whatever the number was. It was a ridiculously cheap number. And then I think you had it all revalued, and then you kind of, you know, used the creative side to pour more money out, and then put the money to something else. And
Yeah,
I bought amazed, you know.
I bought it for 175, refurbished it, it valued at 500 as 4 apartments, so pulled about 140 grand out, as well as my original 40 grand deposit and money to do it with. So I pulled all that out and ended up with 4 properties that were all actually renting for £550 a month each, with mortgages of like just under £200 a month each.
Well, I think that deserves a round of applause, because that is just such an amazing deal. And if anyone takes the trouble, I'm sure Glenn's got something somewhere that kind of shows you if he wants to. But like, most folks would go in and have a look and say, yes, we'll just fix it up. We'll put the magnolia on the walls and the gloss on the skirtings, and out the door it goes for that figure. But I think that to be honest, I'm not, you know, trying to pick you up here or anything. It was just, you allowed me to see things from a completely different perspective, from a real property investor's perspective. And you saved me years and years and years by showing me how to do those things. And that's just one that I can sort of remember. There's loads of others as well that I went to see. There's a beautiful farmhouse, I don't know if you've still got it, but it's a huge, great farmhouse you had somewhere at that time, and it was on 2 or 3 acres of land.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this is just a stunning property all on its own. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but I think you decided it had so much land on it that it would be a really good place for storage. And because you've got so many properties in it, constantly needing new bathrooms and new kitchens and things like that, there was a plumbing company that was going bust. So who would be looking for plumbing companies going bust? No one, except for Armstrong. And you went in and you bought everything, and it all went in a container, and you sat it on your piece of land, and whenever you needed a couple of sinks or a vanity or whatever it was, you just reach into the back of the 40-footer and pull one out. So, holding stock as an investor, that's not really good as well.
Yeah, I got away with them containers for about 6 years before the council told me to move them, but by that time I'd already used up all of the stuff and was renting them out for people. So.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if you didn't go off into the haulage business or something like that, or design portable living units out of those storage containers.
Yeah, it's quite funny because I forget.
There's loads of things like that.
I forget a lot of this stuff because it's just so much has happened over the years, and I suppose you don't end up buying, a few hundred properties within 4 or 5 years without being a bit creative.
Well, I think you set yourself a challenge at one point to buy a property per week. And I spoke to you about it, and I said, what's it always like? You said to me, that Friday was the most chaotic day because that's the day that you were picking up keys, you're sending people along to different estate agents to buy stuff and to hand over keys to get access to properties, and while that was going on, you were looking for more. And I think, did you buy like 5 in 1 week or something like that, or 6 in 1 week? It was this phenomenal machine that you kind of developed to just buy this huge amount of properties. And at the end of 12 months, you had an additional 50-something properties to add to your portfolio.
Yeah,
I think I bought a flat or something in 12 months. And you bought 50.
I bought 52 in 48 weeks.
52. I mean, the numbers are roughly along those lines. But that is so amazing.
I'd set myself a target, and I told everyone I was going to do it, didn't I? I was going to do 52 in 52 weeks, and I did 52 in 48. In fact, I can share a funny story with everybody that I got a phone call from an agent, and they said, look, Glenn, you've bought a property off us about 6 weeks ago, and you've not been to collect the keys. And I actually forgot about that property.
Oops, 200 grand.
Like you do, yeah. But we just had that machine rolling. It was just a machine I set up and run. But there we go.
That's so amazing. It's so cool. And like the thing is that people don't realise is that you actually thought about how to do this. Obviously you did, but you set up the structure, you set up the individuals, the people to take the calls, the people to go and show the tenants in, the people to let the tenants out, the people to sort out the construction works, the people to oversee this. That sort of mastermind group that you utilised, I think it's why you were just so far ahead of everybody else in your strategies on that particular occasion,
We ended up with 450 properties that we had under management, okay, of which over 200 were mine, and I had four staff running. So 4 staff were running a portfolio of 450 properties from one letting agent's place that we set up, that we bought.
That is a tight little deal right there, isn't it? I mean, like you hanging around with you guys, you kind of just showed me what was possible. And I just had my own very small, sort of limited view on things, because I was just working within my own sort of comfort zone. And I just sort of braid it up a little bit and stretch my neck out a bit, and explained earlier, on the odd occasion. And I thought to myself, I always think to myself, what would Glenn do on this occasion, apart from pour himself a glass of wine, or a glass of champagne, I should say. What would Glenn do? And I do that. And I'm only saying things to me like, well, you know, have you put the offering on that property? And I said, no, not yet. So we'll put an offering. Yeah. And then I'd say, I've put an offering. How much should you put in? And so you're just on my back constantly. And I'd say X. And he said, are you embarrassed by that offer? And I'd say, well, no, I think it's just a reasonable offer. He said, if you're not embarrassed by your offer, you're offering too much. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go in, I'm going to be completely cheeky. So it's up to 250, I'm going to offer 185, and I'm just going to see what happens. And occasionally, you just don't know people's circumstances. You just don't know what's going on in their lives. Occasionally, one pops up. But if you don't try that, if you never ever have the idea in the first place, you just don't even try. You think, we're asking 250 or pay 250. You don't even try to knock it down to a number that's a bit crazy. Last time I remember you telling me you're off on holiday, and I think you had your wife in the car, the kids in the car, you had your suitcase, your passport, you literally
Yeah, I know, the estate agent phoned me, didn't he? And I ended up going and viewing a property on the way.
And the lady said, oh no, we can't do it with anybody else except Glenn Armstrong. And you went in. You went in on your way to the airport, signed up a deal, so you had like another, whatever it was, a couple hundred go whatever in equity when you came back, and I thought, oh my God, I believe this guy.
That was actually with Mike, the estate agent, and the bloke was actually emigrating, and I ended up speaking to him for about 20 minutes about his selection of John Wayne videos that he was exporting to Australia with him, because that was his prized collection. And then I made an offer as I left, and then I got a phone call on the way that the bloke actually accepted it, and he actually said to Mike, yeah, and he spoke to me about my John Wayne collection. No one ever does that. Of course I'll sell it to him for that price. So it was just most of these deals I remember when we talk about them, so it's cool. Listen, Richard, a few other bits and pieces I need to get asked before we run out, and I've had a comment from somebody on here, Mike, who says, property aside, I think you should ask Richard back, just so we can hear more of his really interesting stories.
Mate, I haven't even started. It was just touching on the tip of stuff. It has been an amazing adventure. And honestly, Glenn, I do kind of just think, oh my goodness, like if we stay on track, I'll just share something with everybody is, if I stay on track with these property things, I'll try and do a few more if I can. I'll try and stress.
I don't use the word try, Richard. That's just a bollocks word I don't like. It's banned.
I'm just being a bit polite. I'm looking at the portfolio and I'm looking to releasing additional funds to go and do some more stuff, so I'm just eyeing up a few little bits and pieces at the moment. So I'll still keep dabbling, as they say.
Yeah.
But, because of you and your constant nagging, I've actually put myself in a position where at some point in my life, right, I could be sitting on several million in cash in the bank, and I never ever would have dreamt in my wildest that would have been possible. And if you ask anybody that's got a job, and there's loads of people who have got jobs, it's like, can you see yourself in 10, 15, 20 years' time, whenever it is, can you see yourself with millions of pounds that are yours in the bank? Can you actually see yourself in that position? And they can't, because we're all kind of programmed into this system that we just can't see beyond our comfort zone.
So how are you getting on with this Section 24 and the removal of interest rate relief?
Doesn't affect me in the slightest, actually. All the properties I've got, the mortgage is now relatively kind of small. It's a couple hundred grand here and a couple hundred grand there. So there's not a huge amount that kind of affects me. So I'd say the Section 24 removal, which I was really anxious about, I'm just on the borderline. Like if I'd have built the business up so I generated 200,000 instead of 100, and if I had X properties instead of X, I might have some issues. Some people have left the country, gone to live in Malta and all sorts of places around the world where it's a bit more friendly for landlords and things. But I'm just at that point where it doesn't really affect me, and I think that we have to constantly be re-evaluating. Remember I said like about spinning plates, you have to keep looking backwards as well, because things are changing constantly, and while you're focused up on the deal, like a sort of lion looking for prey, you know, stuff's going on behind you that you need to be aware of, and the Section 24 thing is exactly that, that you can now not claim the interest.
Look, we've done, I know you've not been on them, but we've run webinars with experts that have got a lot of my clients that listen to this off and around the situation without having to refinance and without having to pay stamp duty and all that type of stuff. So
I definitely want to listen in on one of those, or come on and see you guys, give you that bottle of champagne and meet some of the other people as well. I miss you guys.
Right, got a few questions here, and I think some of them are things I can answer for someone. So somebody's on here, Fowler said he's had an offer accepted pre-COVID. Now the lender have withdrawn their offer. How do I go to the lender to renegotiate the price? But it's the vendor. So I mean, you could, if it's for an agent, Fowler, go and talk to the agent, or you could go to the vendor and say, look, the valuation has been downvalued, and you know, throw that one at them, or alternatively, look for a new lender and just do another survey with the new lender. And you know, our mortgage broker is very, very creative when it comes to finding best deals and all that type of stuff. And he does he does my webinar every Friday, so you can chat to him about perhaps trying to refinance it somewhere else. But I'd go back to the vendor first and speak to them, or through the agent, and just tell them what's happened. And they may agree or not agree. If you don't ask, you don't get, to reduce the price accordingly to whatever the lender said. There's not been that many questions today, actually, Richard. I think people are more fascinated by your story.
It means that everything's been answered fully and everybody's in complete understanding of what's going on.
Which is a first, I've got to tell you.
Exactly, a first for me, for sure. Oh, well, you know, like, I'll be along and I'll come along and see you play the boys, and, you know, so we'll both catch up and I'll make. And it'd be nice to meet some of the other people that are around, you know, if we get the opportunity to do that. And for sure, like, you know, I could never possibly dream of answering any question that you hope to do, you know, but I'm happy to share the little information I do have with anyone that may be remotely interested.
Cool, and you actually live near Uxbridge, don't you? So.
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's that's the big place. You know, that's the shopping centre. That's the pubs and clubs and things. So that's just up the road from me. So that's my kind of little neck of the woods.
Cool.
I've been here for a while, so I know quite well.
Cool. All right. Well, look, I've just had a bit of a flurry of questions, so I'm just going to go through them.
Okay.
Who did you need to be on your team to get started? What did you need immediately? Catherine, it was about 15 properties I got before I started. I employed one person to help me run them, and then I turned a few of my properties into HMOs at the same time, and so the extra income that went with the extra hassle all got passed on to the person who I took on to run it, and the extra income paid for the person to run it. So and then I just built it up from there, and there was problems all the way along the way, because at one point I was actually the 8th largest housing benefit landlord in the UK, and for my claim to fame, and there was a big article in the local paper about how terrible it was that a local businessman had received, I think they said, over 600 grand in housing benefit, and it needs to be declared, and which was ridiculous. But I struggled to start off with getting rents off of them all. We found processes to make that work. So the team kind of built up around the needs, but I'm constantly looking and re-evaluating how I could do it better. How can I do it better? And whereas a lot of my clients would just got the benefit of all my mess ups, if you like, and So,
yeah, that's sweat and labour, for sure. Sweat and hard work.
So like Richard may come to me and say, how do you deal with that? And I tell him, only because I've not done it right in the first place and learned the hard way. But isn't that what a mentor is all about? Having somebody that's been there and done it and tells you so you don't have to. Okay, so Peter says, I own 10 properties, give me a total rental profit of £3,000 a month. So that's cool. Can I easily take that money out every month out of my business account if I have a limited company, or is a lot of tax malarkey you need to go through? Peter, you really need to speak to a tax specialist about it. John Goodinson, quite often, he's done one of them. I'll get him to come and do another one of the evening sessions, and he'll be able to answer your questions for you. Typically what I'd always done is the company, the properties that I had, I'd own a limited company that was the management company, and the management company would collect the rent and keep 15% of the rent as a fee, and then send me the balance so I could pay the mortgages and stuff. Thus I transferred 15% of the money, so your £3,000, it would be somewhere like £500 a month, into a limited company that you can then take dividends from. So, but everybody's different, Peter, and everybody's in a different set of circumstances. So you really need to get individual advice for your own situation. And obviously, as you know, Section 24 comes along and it starts really biting, which is biting fairly hard already at the moment, and there may be ways where you can mitigate and get your interest rate relief back again by setting it up in the right way. But once a month, I have people that specialise in the Section 24 and trust funds and all that come on here to share with everybody the information to make sure that you are paying the minimum amounts of tax and stuff that you need to do, because obviously it's far better to legally end up in your pocket than in the government's. Joanna says, can we listen to this webinar at a later time? Joanna, all the webinars are posted a few days later, sometimes the next day, on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is called Property Millionaire Academy, and they're all in there. There's all of my interviews that I've done are on there, or most of the ones I've done are on there, and accessible to everyone. Don't forget, if you're on there, to subscribe and also press the notification button so that you get notification every time we add a new one on, and that way you never actually miss them. The only difference is between watching them afterwards is that you don't get to ask the questions that you do by coming onto them live. Neil said to me, what was your favourite strategy after your deposits run out? Well, I did same day refinance. So literally, I'd find a property that was worth, let's say, 140 grand. I'd negotiate a deal using my nibbling technique, something I'm sure that Richard knows all about, otherwise he wouldn't be where he is.
Thank you for the nibbling technique, thank you.
And negotiate the deal for 100 grand. And then at the time I'd applied to refinance it before I owned it for 140. The surveyors would go out, and if they valued it at 140, they'd offer me 119. So I'd buy it cash for 100, and a few minutes later they'd refinance it for me at 119 and be ringing me up saying, okay, we've deducted stamp duty, but there's a balance to come of about 15 grand, where shall we send it? So every time I bought a house I was getting between 10 and 20 grand cash back, and now my clients are still doing that in the right areas, although slightly slower. So they are buying properties and getting cash back on the day. It's structured slightly different to how it was, so they're not same day refinances, but there is a structure that I teach my clients, and if you go onto YouTube you'll be able to listen to some of the interviews I've done with people who are doing just that and recycling their cash, just like Richard did with his first two deals. I'm pretty sure it would have been that I sent in a bridge and he got a mortgage around the rest of it, and then and it was structured like that. Yeah. So The bridging would have bought it in the morning, so the 400 grand would have bought it, and then he'd have refinanced them already lined up at 500 and been able to borrow something like 430, 440 on day one.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Glenn. Two bottles of champagne down in the morning now.
Yeah, that still only counts as 1 millionaire though.
Oh, blast. Okay, well, I have to get to the next million. Blast. You're always challenging people, aren't you? Constantly.
B Mystery, so I don't know if your first name on here. Missed the beginning of the webinar as a recording. Yep, it's on YouTube. Property Millionaire Academy. Right, we're going to do a couple more questions because we're running very much out of time. What type of properties have you invested in for the most part? What advice to give someone running out of cash that wants to expand? Chris, it's very much about buying the right properties in the right area, and you're either going to buy in the cheap areas and recycle your cash and do a no money left in strategy, or you're going to do a same day or refinancing thing where you're using discounts for deposits, which is a no money down strategy, which is in a slightly different price bracket. They do only work within certain price brackets, and it's what I teach on my training programs. So also we do discuss it quite a bit on some of the different YouTube videos that I've done. So Catherine said, really interested. Thank you, Glenn. Joanna said, thank you. Lorna says, if you keep the mortgage payments low, this is more beneficial for Section 24. Yeah, it certainly is, Lorna, because if your mortgage is a low percentage mortgage, then the Section 24 isn't going to affect you quite so much because there's not so much interest rate relief to have on a low bit. And no, it's not helpful if you want to extract money, because if you do want to extract money, then it's refinanced at a higher figure, and at that point you're then paying Section 24, but on a much higher rate. So I'm pretty sure that Richard will be coming to me and saying, Glenn, I want to refinance some of my properties. How the hell do I get around this Section 24 stuff?
How did you know I was going to ask you? I didn't know my next question.
Yeah, just. And Joshua says, how do you start the training with yourself? Drop an email, Joshua, info@glenarmstrong.com, and one of my staff will pick it up and ring you and go through all the details. So, yeah, there we go. So Richard, tell me, abseiling down the side of a building, what's that all about?
Yeah, so I used to love working with kids, and I had really great relationships with all the producers and directors at the BBC that worked in the children's department. And what used to happen was that the BBC, when it was here in London, it's in Manchester now, as you probably know, was set up into different departments. So you had, for example, like education, and they do stuff for schools and things like that. You had religious programs, and that would be your, Sunday kind of programs that you get, Songs of Praise and things like that. And one of the programs you might have heard was called Blue Peter. And the thing about Blue Peter is that they're always jumping out of aeroplanes, and they're always, going down the river in an open canoe, and they're always doing all these crazy things. So I got a phone call, and they said, "Oh, Richard, are you free on Thursday?" I said, "Yeah, I think I'm free that day." And I said, "Oh, we've got a presenter that's going to abseil down the side of the building, and what we want to do is we want to do like a piece to camera. So you'll all be on one rope, okay. The presenter will be on the other rope, and he'll sort of be walking down the building as you do when you're abseiling, slipping the knot in the carabiner, yeah." And so what we did is we hired, the military very kindly offered the top guys of their sort of parachute regiment to come along and help us. Now these guys, when they do the abseiling, what they do is they hook themselves up into the carabiner, and there's a certain knot you have to do, try and get it right, it is important. And what they do is they run forwards down the front of the building. So you imagine somebody just literally walking down the front of the building and the rope is open up. That's what they do. So they can do like 200 foot in 15 seconds. They literally run down the front of the building. And so I've got my camera gear. The camera weighs like 15 kilos plus batteries and things. Quite heavy, but it's quite big sits on your shoulder. I'd always wear safety straps and things like that. And so the next thing you know, I'm being lowered, right, off of the side of the NatWest Tower in the City of London. If you have a look at it with a helicopter from above, it's in the shape of NW, the NatWest Tower. It's 23 stories, it's 230 feet high, and then you've got a little bit of the roof section where we were. So these military guys, they were kind of lashing down the roads and things like that. And I had to eventually put on my harness and stuff like that, and make sure I got the knot right on the carabiner in case it slips. And off I went. I also had a safety rope that the soldiers decided to kind of tie me up with, and because I was going to weigh a bit more with the camera equipment and things like that, I just really wanted to make sure it was tied around something extra solid. And so off I went. So the presenter kind of like, I don't know if you've ever done any abseiling, but there's a certain point where you sort of lean back on the rope, right? You're holding the rope, and then you're actually totally relying on the rope. So that rope, which is about as thick as your finger, is the difference between you staying on that building or ending up splattered on the floor down below. And so there's a little panic that rises up within you. But I had to be a professional, and I am a professional. So we stayed calm. I used a wide lens. Wide lens means I've got more stuff in focus. I don't want to be messing around with the focus and the exposures. I want to kind of hold myself up inside the building. And so off we went. And we went down the side of the building. We did this piece of camera. We went all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. We got to the bottom floor. They presented me, I'll show it to you, I can never find it, some with a certificate that said, well done, you've done 230 foot as an abseil, as a cameraman. And often the camera people are sort of, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but the camera guys are often sort of unsung heroes, because the presenter could be extra super safe, and I'm doing exactly what he does, except I've got an additional 30 pounds of weight to carry, and try and get the shot and the sound and the audio and things like that.
So you're not really thinking about the scariness of it, you're just getting on and doing your job.
I know, I was scared, definitely. No, like I said, there's that point where if you sort of lean back on the rope, you get to a certain point where you're standing on the ledge, and then you just kind of lean back more and more and more, and you look down at the ground and you think, Struth, that's a long distance down there. I'm going to get this right. So, but since then I did it another couple of times as well. So it was quite a cool experience to get up and down and do it a few times.
Richard.
And like I say, total respect to the parachute, because they were just
Richard.
Amazing. They are mad.
Richard, thank you very much for joining us this evening and sharing your story and your journey and a few little tips.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been good fun telling you some stories.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll see you soon, you guys. And good luck to everybody as well. And regardless of whatever your opinions may be, is that Glenn can lead you forward and take you to where you want to go, just little by little, because he's done it himself and proven that he can do it. So, I would listen to what this guy's got to say. I just say one more thing. I'm really sorry. I know it's really close to time, but about 10 years ago, I think it was 2009, he said to me, you probably don't remember, he said to me, I want to be able to come out one day, open up a garage and choose which car I want to drive in. And I said, well, what cars do you want, Glenn? And he said, I want a Rolls Royce, and I want a Bentley, and I want an Aston Martin, and I want a Ferrari. And I was thinking, yeah, all right. Hang in there, buddy. Most people just got one car, maybe a spare one, for shopping or whatever. And lo and behold, you made your own dream come true, because now I believe that you have those cars and a whole few more as well on top. And so, that's why I kind of trusted your judgment. And thank you for believing in me and pushing me forward to do what I did as well.
My pleasure.
Well done, Glenn.
Thank you very much. All right. Listen, take care. Thanks very much for everyone for joining us this evening. We'll be back again tomorrow evening. You'll be getting an email with who's on tomorrow evening. Thursday I'll be doing the Q&A session, and Friday Ajit will be back for the mortgage session that we do every Friday. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Richard, once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciated. I look forward to my bottle of champagne. So there we go, Richard Manzanero, my 86th known millionaire client. A pleasure.
Pleasure as always. Take good care.
Yeah, take
Drive
care.
safely.
Very good evening to
All
everyone.
right, take care. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Cheers now.
Stay safe, and I'll speak to you all very soon.